politicians that are putting emphasis and taking advantage on fear of anger. They want politics that is made positively. They're looking for optimism, and they want also positive messages.
We've sort of failed in being very aggressive in promoting what the government has done.
I'm 32 years old. I'm a member of parliament. I haven't been able to purchase a home. I came here to this country as a refugee. I've been a single mom for the last 14 years. And these are things that are not unique to just me. They're unique to a lot of people that I'm surrounded by.
The Liberal caucus is gathering in London, Ontario this week ahead of next week's return to Ottawa and Parliament. It's a strategy session that comes after a summer ceding ground in public opinion polls to the Tories, and one that's starting without a leader. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's arrival was delayed when his military plane broke down in India on Sunday. The plane was finally repaired and cleared to fly overnight, and Trudeau, along with the Canadian delegation, are now en route back to Canada. As his caucus, though, waits for its leader, let's size up the state of the party with the front bench. Joining us this evening, former New Brunswick Liberal Premier Brian Gallant. He's the CEO of Space Canada. Former Conservative Cabinet Minister and MP Monty Solberg. He's the CEO of New West Public Affairs. CTV News political analyst and former NDP leader Tom Mulcair is with us, as is Sabrina Nanji. She's a journalist and the founder of the Queen's Park Observer. Hi, everybody. Nice to see you tonight. Brian, I'll start with you. There was one clip in that sort of montage of Liberal MPs that stuck out for me, the one in which the individual said that they had failed at promoting basically what they have done, and she felt that it seemed to me was sort of to blame for a lot of the slide that they've seen, that the Liberals have seen in the polls. Do you think it's a communications problem or a policy problem or a mix of both?
Well, let me start off by just talking about the dynamic of caucus members sort of criticizing in general. It's obviously not something that you see happen too often, but you know, typically when a governing party is behind in the polls, many caucus members will identify their respective grievances with the government as the main issue, as why the government is sort of floundering in the polls. Often the issues can vary widely. This time around, my sense is that won't be the case. I think most, if not all, the grievances will center around affordability issues and the rising cost of living. So I do think that some, especially speaking to media in some public way, may sort of talk about things like communications. And why they do that, A, they think that's really the issue, or B, it's a nice way to say, you know, we got to get our act together, and they don't want to talk about the policies, the direction, the priorities, and the record of the government and criticize that. So they kind of talk about, you know, we're doing great things, so it's really, it must be communication. So it's a way to sort of kind of skate around the idea that they may be criticizing any policy issues, but they also may sincerely believe it's a communications barrier, which to be fair, there's no doubt that Poilievre has been very focused on the affordability issue, and it's sort of a one issue that he's focused on for months, and rightfully so, politically speaking. And of course, it's an issue that worries many Canadians. And it's hard for the Trudeau government, after a few years in power, to be able to get a message across that they've done enough, given what everybody's going through.
The message I'm hearing very clearly, particularly over the last 48 hours, Monty, it's like every minister and MP got an email saying, like, here's our new response to the question around affordability and why the Tories have had a successful summer. And it's really three parts. It's first, and this happened to me in 2 interviews I've done in the past 2 days, right? An acknowledgement that this is the issue that's top of mind for Canadians. The caveat that the Liberals have done a lot to address affordability through things like childcare and the Canada Child Benefit, but then a third part that says, but we have heard from Canadians that they want us to do more. Do you think that messaging will counter the narrative that the Tories have had out there over the last number of months, that the Liberals are out of touch?
No, I don't think it will. And as a matter of fact, the very fact that the Prime Minister is coming back from India right now, where he's been talking about everything from climate to diversity issues and those kinds of things, indicates just how out of touch the Liberals really are. The Prime Minister should be in Canada these days talking to regular Canadians about some of the issues that are impacting them. I mean, Pierre Poilievre did an outstanding job drawing a sharp distinction between the Conservative approach and the Liberal approach at the CPC convention in Quebec City. And, while the Liberals are serving up kale and quinoa, Pierre Poilievre is serving up meat and potatoes. And that's what Canadians are worried about. They are worried about rent. They're worried about affordability. They're worried about housing. And the Liberals have left the playing field completely open to Pierre Poilievre.
I mean, the knock against kale aside, Tom, I think just really, I mean, the Prime Minister was attending at the latter part of that trip, the G20. So I imagine if he hadn't gone there, there would be some ramifications as well. But to Monty's overall point around the success of the Tories' focus, and to jumping off Brian's point as well, the success of the Tories' focus on this issue, do you feel like the Liberals have enough runway, if there is an election 2 years from now, to refocus and again counter that narrative, or is it kind of baked in at this point that there is a sense that they are out of touch?
I don't think they're going to be able to break that sense that they're out of touch very easily, but there is a lot of runway, to use your expression. And I think that they've got to stop doing the same thing that they did when they were there in Prince Edward Island at the cabinet retreat. Every answer that Mr. Trudeau gave, and let's not kid ourselves, he's an able politician, but he's been getting awful communications advice because he feels that he has to defend everything his government has done. So every answer began with, well, we're going to continue doing what we're doing, and we understand that there's a problem. So it's essentially the three-step that you just described, Vassy. They have to come up with a bold plan to actually deal with housing. They're the government. Thanks to their deal with the NDP, they can act like a majority of government. They've got to actually do something. And they're always trying to defend their last 8 years, and that's a losing proposition. They've got to understand that for the first time, they are behind in the polls. And it's not enough for them to convince themselves that everybody else is wrong. It's this auto-hypnosis that I've seen the Liberals go through in the past. They convinced themselves of the same thing when they were facing Stephen Harper, and they had Paul Martin, who was just going to steamroll this guy. Well, Harper won. And they've got to understand that Poilievre is talking to people in a way that they understand, and talking about the issues that are top of mind for them, and especially using a terminology that is essentially sustainable development. He's talking about fairness between generations. And that is really resonating with young people. They're being told correctly that they're the first generation of Canadians who will have less than their parents and indeed their grandparents. And they're saying there's something not fair here, and Poilievre is proposing himself. You can criticize the content of that proposal, but he's proposing himself, and he's got a plan to try to address that. So that's why it's working for them. The Liberals have got to figure it out. They can't just continue to say, we're great, let's keep going.
I feel like, Sabrina, for the last number of months, great minds like our co-panelists have been telling the Liberals they need to put more specifics on the table, particularly, for example, let's take the specific issue of housing affordability. You were on Question Period this week with me. I had a lengthy interview with the housing minister. I asked him a variety of different things about which policies they might even be considering pursuing, and pretty much every answer involved the pursuit of more consultation, rather than a yes or a no or an even a maybe for a few weeks from now. Do you have a sense at all that the Liberals might be attaching more specifics anytime soon, or that they understand that time is kind of ticking and maybe even has already passed in order to be able to do that successfully?
Yeah, I caught your interview, and I really wasn't satisfied with the minister's answers on housing either. And it's interesting to me because, of course, every level of government has a part to play with what's happening with our housing situation right now. But of course, we know that the provinces do a lot of the heavy lifting. But I think it's a bit naive for the federal Liberals and Trudeau to, just sort of pass the buck and not have specifics right now. I mean, they're talking about having a messaging problem. This is the number one issue for most Canadians right now. And we are hearing, in contrast, Poilievre speaking about this almost daily. And that's smart. And we've seen the results of it. I mean, the Liberals have been tanking throughout the summer in the polls, while Poilievre and the Conservatives are doing well. And just talking about the convention, what a difference it makes, the vibe between the two parties. So definitely, I think that there's enough runway, as you said, to mount a proper attack, but also put out these policies. But I really think that when you've got Liberal backbenchers and caucus members airing their dirty laundry, on the record and off the record to reporters, it's certainly going to make for an awkward caucus retreat in London, which, southwestern Ontario is always politically important, electorally important. And so I do think that while there's going to be talk about the polls, mounting a, proper attack against the Conservatives, whether or not, Trudeau should even stick around. I mean, the boss is showing up late to the party. I think it's going to be a big soul searching moment for the Liberals this week, for sure.